First and foremost, familia, I want to say I apologize for the sound of my voice right now. I am very much sick right now, so I am powering through and struggling through. But, we got this. We're going to keep it together, and we're going to get through this story. So let's just jump straight into it. So, familia, here is where I normally go into a short background description of our victim, but in today's story, there really isn't much background on her, as the story is very recent. And when I say recent, I mean literally this month of this year. So we're just going to go into this insane case of a young woman's life who was taken in the same home that her two children occupied. MARYJAYNE Collins entered the world on October 6th in the year 2000, and as a young woman, she became a mother of two boys with her ex-boyfriend. However, unfortunately, the 23-year-old mom of two was killed just 2 days shy of her 24th birthday in her apartment at Teakwood Apartment Complex at 2401 Repsdorf Road in Seabrook, Texas. The Harris County Medical Examiner's Office said that her cause of death was blunt force trauma with stab wounds, and it's believed that she was killed right in front of her children. When police arrived at her home at approximately 11:30 a.m., they rushed her and her two sons out of the apartment, and initially they were called for a report of gunshots, so they had went out there looking for a gunshot victim, but instead they came across MARYJAYNE's deceased body in her apartment. Police did notice that there was a Ring camera sitting outside of MARYJAYNE's apartment door, and they were able to retrieve the footage from her Ring camera, and they saw a young man coming into her apartment and then leaving her apartment. So they knew off the rip that he was the one that was responsible for her death, and police called in for the SWAT to crawl the premises and told residents to stay in their homes as they looked for the young man in the complex, but he had already left the area. So who was this young man? Investigators learned that it was a 22-year-old guy named Dewayland Ernest Hurst. And who is Dewayland Hurst? Well, apparently he's an up-and-coming rapper, or so he said he was, in the state of Texas, and he was the boyfriend of MARYJAYNE. Allegedly, he befriended her online, hopped into her DMs, and that's how they started talking, eventually linking up, and, that's how that went. Now, this isn't your typical, boy kills his love interest type of domestic violence situation. You see, Dewayland and MARYJAYNE met and started dating in June of this year, according to ABC13.com, and Dewayland sought MARYJAYNE out, but not because he liked her and he wanted to court her. No. Dewayland only had one thing on his mind when dealing with her, and that was revenge. You see, MARYJAYNE, as I mentioned, had two sons, and her boys were with a young man named Michael King. 21-year-old Michael King is currently incarcerated for the homicide of another young man named Dewan Triplett, which happened back on July 31st, 2020. And if I'm butchering Dewan's name, I do apologize for that. Please forgive me. But like I said, in July of 2020, Dewan was killed when he was shot to death on the east side of Texas City, just an hour after he was threatened by two armed men at a gas station on the west side of Texas City, and one of those men being Michael King. Michael turned himself into the authorities and told them his actions were in self-defense. The criminal complaint of that case stated Dewan was seen outside arguing with a woman in the street, and this is when he was approached by the two men. Apparently, they approached Dewan because they believed he had stolen some firearms from them. That's what Michael told the police. They approached him because they believed that he stole some firearms from them. At that moment, no one got hurt when they approached Dewan while he was arguing with the woman. But then it was reported that the two men, Dewan and the woman, all went back to a house on Bell Drive. I'm not sure if it was the woman's house or one of the guys' houses, but they all went back to a house on Bell Drive. And this is where another argument ensued. According to Michael King, Dewan went to his vehicle and reached into his vehicle, which he believed to be for a weapon. So he claimed to have shot Dewan in self-defense, expecting Dewan to retrieve a weapon and use it against him. After getting shot, Dewan tried to drive himself away from the scene, but ended up crashing his vehicle 1 block away, and then he was taken to the hospital, but he was already deceased. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask you to leave in the comments if you truly believe that Michael King was just protecting himself in self-defense, or do you believe he shot him for another ulterior motive, such as his belief that Dewayland was trying to steal the firearms from him. While you're leaving your comment, let's move on. So the whole thing about this whole situation with Dewayland, right? Dewayland, Michael King, what's the connection? Well, Dewayland and Dewayland are brothers. So Dewayland decided he needed to get his lick back in the worst way. You see, Dewayland sat on that hurt and that anger for 4 years before moving in on his plans by getting close to Mary Jane for a few months before her demise. It was also reported that Dewayland was physically abusive to Mary Jane during their time together. In fact, he was so abusive towards her, he left her with injuries and bruises all over her body, and she even showed them to some of her close loved ones. When she would tell them about what was going on, she would take pictures, she would show them the pictures, she would show them her body, the actual bruises on her body, including a bite mark that was on her face that she showed to her grandmother. The last time she confided in them about the abuse was literally just a few days before her demise. You know, whole time not even knowing that this guy's behavior was all a part of his wicked plan to get back at Michael King for what he did to his brother through his children's mother. Now, on that morning of Friday, October 4th, Michael made a FaceTime call to Mary Jane on an illegal cell phone he was using in prison. And apparently, Dewayland was there, and he was the one who answered that call. And this is when he seized the opportunity for the ultimate revenge. Dewayland began torturing Michael as he had the audacity to slap one of Michael's sons right in the face as Michael sat on that call, helpless. And it was reported that the child began to scream and cry, and Michael told his son to get away from Dewayland and, like go to another room or something. At this point, it was about 10 in the morning, and then the call ended, and it was the last time that Michael got to see Mary Jane alive. Dewayland was seen on the Ring camera leaving Mary Jane's apartment just before 11 a.m. And Michael King made a phone call to his mother and explained to her what was going on. So his mother then made a Facebook post, urging for people to go and check on Mary Jane to see what was going on. But people instead called the police. And so the police ended up going to Mary Jane's house, and the people who called, they thought that she had got shot or something. So that's why the whole mention of gunshots was even made during those 911 calls. Now, if you're wondering whether or not Mary Jane was aware of Dewayland's relationship to her baby father's victim, that part is not clear, so we may never know if she knew of the connection between the men. Now, I was scrolling through Facebook to see if I could find any other additional details about this story, and I ended up coming into some wild claims. First, I want to address the physical abuse that Mary Jane endured from Dewayland. As I mentioned earlier, Mary Jane wasn't keeping her abuse quiet. She made sure to tell her loved ones about what was going on. But not only that, according to a young lady named Tish Lee on Facebook, she said Mary Jane was apparently making the steps towards a safe environment for herself and her boys. Because you see, it's being alleged that this was not the first time that Dewayland put his hands on Mary Jane's children in front of Michael's face. There was a time before that when he physically abused those boys during a FaceTime call with their father, and then the Department of Children's Services had to get involved, which then forced Mary Jane to get up and move out of her apartment that she was living in at that time. And she was then moved into a brand new apartment where she thought she was safe, which is the one that she took her last breath at. And as for how did Dewayland find out where Mary Jane lived, nobody knows. That detail isn't clear, so, let's not start jumping to conclusions, because I know some of y'all will be real quick to be like, oh, she gave him the address and da-da-da-da-da. We don't know that to be true, right? So let's not make those claims. But anyway, the girl Tish also stated on her Facebook page that when police arrived to the complex, Mary Jane's sons were banging on the glass window, screaming for help when they saw that the police was outside. So that's how the police knew which exact apartment to go to. And I was also reading the comments of a post made by the Fact Line page, and I saw several people say some things that stuck out to me. Like, I saw a couple comments mention that Mary Jane had witnessed the stabbing death of her own parents. It's wild to think that she watched the death of her own parents by way of being stabbed, only for her to have been stabbed, possibly right in front of her own children's faces as well. And even if they didn't witness the actual stabbing, they were certainly in the same house as her, hearing her blood-curdling screams until she went silent, confirming that she was no longer with them. And I saw someone else say that she had a hard life growing up, yet even though it was so hard, she was so sweet. And I saw a lot of those comments. Like, a lot of people were saying how she was just this sweet girl and she was a great mom to her boys. And I know one of her boys had autism because she herself had posted about it on her page. So, shout outs to her for just being a young mom with all the patience and care that her baby boy needed. Now, if all that is not wild enough, there's another young lady by the name of Tamara Cooper who posted an eerie message on her Facebook page, and I'll just read it as a direct quote from her. She said, quote, "So I just got told again this morning that word on the street is me and Annalise are next to get killed by Dewayland Hurst because I'm Mike King's baby mama and she's his sister. And that supposedly he say, if I can't get to Mike King, I'm going to get his family. This is the 5th person that told me that he told them that. I don't even have shit to do with the whole situation. The fuck? Now share that. So when something happened, don't say I didn't say shit. Go find him." End quote. Mind you, this post was made just 4 days after Mary Jane's death. And as of right now, so far from what I can tell, Tamara Cooper seems to be safe because she's still posting on her social media and being active and stuff like that. So apparently, Michael King has more children and family out here in the world that are walking targets. And all behind his actions from 4 years ago. Because mind you, it's been almost a whole month since this happened, right? With Mary Jane. I'm scouring the internet trying to find any information on any arrests that were made, and it seems that Dewayland is still out here roaming the streets. He hasn't been detained. So people's lives are literally at risk as we speak. And we know Dewayland is good for letting time pass and letting folks get comfortable before pouncing on an opportunity to cause mayhem. So it could be months or years before he strikes again. One of Mary Jane's cousins, a woman named Rebecca Rodriguez, made a post on her Facebook page with the GoFundMe link in hopes of anyone willing to donate towards Mary Jane's funeral and the necessities of her children. So I've placed the GoFundMe link in the description box as well as the pinned comment of this video in case any of you feel like you would love to be a helping hand. Now, police are urging that anyone with any information that can lead to the arrest of Dewayland Hurst to please call the Seabrook Police at 281-291-5610 or simply just call 911. And I'll even add to this by saying, please not to try to approach this man or play superhero. He is armed and very much dangerous. That man ain't got nothing else to lose or live for. So, please tread lightly with him because you could see the evil all in his eyes, for real. Familia, this story is extremely recent, but it is wild as hell. It's just so crazy to see how things have changed so much in the streets. I remember when there was a time where, attacking women and children, especially those who were not in the lifestyle, was an automatic penalty for you. That and disrespecting the dead. Nowadays, these folks ain't got no street ethics. You got dudes pissing on graves, dancing on graves, making songs about smoking on their ops and making fun of the dead, consistently bringing their names up in songs. These dudes is attacking women and children who had absolutely nothing to do with nothing. Neither of Michael King's baby mamas had anything to do with what Michael did back in 2020, but as you can see, his actions has gained him collateral damage, and in Dewayland's eyes, Michael was in debt with him, and he was going to collect. And this is why you need to be very mindful of what you do and how you move in these streets. I'm not unfamiliar with certain things. And one thing I could say that I was always so grateful for was that nobody's bullshit ever made it to my doorstep. Now, I have been around other people who allowed their street dealings to get close to home. And I can only thank God that in those scenarios, the opposition still went by certain ethics. So things didn't play out for us like it did for Mary Jane. But again, that was during a different time. All the people I spoke about today are all in their early 20s. Listen, I don't care what nobody say. There's just something different in the water and in the air with the people of today. Folks love to say, oh, it's always been this way. It just wasn't front and center together because we didn't have the internet. Nah, don't get me wrong. Wickedness is always present. Yes, where there's light, there's dark. So there goes that. But it's levels to this shit. I just told y'all, once upon a time, there was street ethics. That doesn't exist anymore. Once upon a time, folks didn't dare to do their dirt outside in broad daylight unless they was batshit crazy. Now, people don't give a fuck for real. They will gun you down at 2 p.m. in front of an elementary school and then hop on a moped and ride off like nothing never happened. People getting their blocks knocked off for the most minute shit you can think of. I'm telling you, when you in tune with spirituality, you can feel the shift in the world. I'm not bugging, right? Just literally look around you. Look at the state of the world. The veil has come undone, y'all. And so anyway, because y'all know I go off into a tangent sometimes. Look, I say all that to say this, right? Michael King is a man living with so many regrets right now. I just know he is. He thought he was doing a good thing by turning himself in. And I mean, I guess you could say that, but it doesn't negate the way that it affected those who loved Dewayland. I always say you cannot control somebody's reactions. And unfortunately, Dewayland went about it in the most wicked way. The get back was and still is so very real for him. He got his eye on Michael's other baby moms and his sister. He's a man on a deadly mission, and it's only going to get worse if he doesn't get apprehended soon. And who knows what's going to happen once he get behind that wall, if he get behind that wall, if he don't take himself out. And then don't even get me started on Mary Jane's sons. Oh my God, those poor little boys. They will only ever grow up knowing that their daddy is in prison and their mom is never coming back, and all over something that she had nothing to do with. Those poor babies will never forget the sounds of their mother being killed. They'll never forget the abuse that they endured from Dewayland. They'll never forget that feeling of helplessness and how they had to bang on the window to get the police's attention because their mother was literally in the house with them dead on the floor. They'll never forget the face of the man who claimed their mother's life. And that in itself is gut-wrenching. All of this behind a plot of revenge. So anyway, familia, if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you so much. You already know how we do. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about this story? Do you believe that Dewayland had every right to plot against Michael and do the things that he's done, including the threats on the other living baby mama? And do you feel like he took it too far and at this point he needs to get dealt with? Do you believe that he even deserves to live at this point? And I only asked that because I saw folks on Facebook saying he needed his life taken as well. How do you feel about Mary Jane and her attempts to get away from this ticking time bomb? Y'all know how we do, familia. Let's chop it up below in the comments. I do pray that Dewayland is brought to justice sooner than later. Rest in peace, Mary Jane Collins. Your life didn't deserve to end the way that it did. I pray that your spirit lives on with your boys and your loved ones forever. You'll never be forgotten.